Jesse Temple is here. You can find his work at Badger Connect. He directs that content, video and written word as well. And we'll talk about some of the things that he has out this week and things that are coming. You hear him on the camp with Zach Halpern as well. And recently, Jesse, what a great honor. The Football Writers Association of America. You are their beat writer of the year. Congratulations. This is an honor. It's an honor for me to have you who's been honored by this award. Congrats.
Well, I don't know about that, but thanks very much, Grant. I appreciate it. It's been a personal or professional ambition of mine for a long time. So to hear that was really rewarding.
Well, congratulations. And if you win another, then you won't be burdened by doing silly, dumb shows like this one. Win one or two more.
Most
I do have a
silly dumb show, my man.
well, silly. I like silly and dumb. Um, I do have a little bye-week game that I want to play at the end, but some housekeeping things that I want to cover because we do have Badgers news, basketball and football over the bye. Kirk Penny is leaving the program. So tell us a little bit about what he's added the last couple of years and what the Badgers are going to miss with him leaving.
Yeah, well, Kirk was really an architect or the architect of the offensive changes that Wisconsin has implemented. And certainly Greg Gard deserves a lot of credit, but he also was willing to hand the keys over and delegate authority to other people on his staff to help. And Penny had a bunch of experience playing internationally. Obviously, he's a FIBA Hall of Famer. And I talked to him for a story about this a couple of years ago that some of the concepts he was using he implemented from when he played on a team in Israel. And Wisconsin's offensive system for so long was known as the swing, and they don't do that anymore. They run what's called a ball screen continuity offense. But ultimately, what you're seeing is a lot more scoring, a lot more 3-point shooting, a style of basketball that mirrors the international game, and that is certainly appealing to more players who want to now come play for Wisconsin. The Badgers averaged 80.1 points per game last season for the first time since 1972 and led the Big Ten in 3-point makes with almost 10 a game. So he's been instrumental in that and the ability to recruit internationally. They have Hayden Jones, who's from New Zealand, in this freshman class. But Greg Gard has also said that this is not going to go away just because Kirk Penny has gone. This is the wave of the future for Wisconsin. He's going back to New Zealand to be with his family. That was a tough situation for him to be so far away. And as he got closer to his third season here, he realized that's not what he wanted to do. The other element of this is who they're bringing in. Brad Davison, the former Badger who played under Greg Gard from 2017 to 2022. I actually had a chance to talk to Brad via WhatsApp he was in Spain still on Tuesday for a story that's going to run Thursday morning on Badger Connect about this process. It's actually pretty wild. He said he got a call from Greg Gard. It would have been Thursday evening in Madison, but early Friday morning in Spain, where Brad was about to begin his fourth season of professional basketball. And Greg basically asked him two questions. One, are you interested in this job? Two, is this even possible for you to get out of your contract and with your family situation in Spain? And Brad credited his wife, Tyra, who was a former 4-year starter for the Indiana women's basketball team, basically saying, when God gives you an opportunity like this to fulfill your dream and this door opens, you've got to walk through it. And ultimately, that's what they decided. Brad actually had his season opener for his team on Saturday. The next day after Greg called him, he played in that game. He knew it was going to be it for him because he's always wanted to be a coach, and he always wanted to be a coach at Wisconsin. So today, actually, they boarded a plane from where they are in Spain to another plane in Madrid to Chicago to Madison. And the expectation is he will be here for practice on Thursday, less than a week after this first conversation even happens. So I'm interested to see how he'll add value to the program as a special assistant to Greg Gard.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get more information on that, and we can follow your work as some of his contributions and more of the Brad Davison story is written. We can talk more about that. On the football front, can you give us the latest on Billy Edwards Jr., Preston Zachman, and Jake Renfro? Where do we stand with those guys?
Preston Zachman is going to be out long term, so I wouldn't expect to see him for a little while. Billy Edwards Jr., I'd have a hard time seeing him playing this week, given what has transpired. Danny O'Neill talked to reporters on Tuesday. He's taken the 1 snaps, so I'd expect to see him. And then Jake Renfro, kind of seems like it's just been a week-to-week type of situation. The Badgers could desperately use his services, given where things stand on the offensive line and with the center position in general. That might be a closer to a game-time decision, but obviously this team's been banged up and has really struggled on the field and could use something positive. I just don't know if it's going to happen on Saturday at the Big House against Michigan.
You and Zach talked on the camp about Luke Fickell's handling of Billy Edwards Jr., especially now that you've had a chance to talk to him, Monday, a week later, with how that injury has rebounded or gotten worse or gotten better. And he talked about not saving Billy from himself. And that's something that in the past he's talked, we have to protect our players from themselves. Is this, as you and Zach kind of talked about it, another example of maybe Luke Fickell saying one thing and not being able to execute it, or saying one thing and doing another?
100%. There are multiple examples that continue to stack up, but you can't say this all along about we need to protect players from themselves. And he specifically referenced Billy Edwards Jr. in the lead up to the Maryland game. And yet they put him out there. And it was clear on the second play of the second series that it was not going to work, because as soon as he had to escape the pocket, he re injured himself. And in practice, no matter what Billy says, and I'm not faulting Billy, he wanted to play, you as a staff have to realize what's likely to happen if you put him out there in harm's way. And Zach and I did talk about this in advance. If Billy's not going to be 100%, do you really want to throw him out there given the offensive line struggles this team has had? Can't run block, now can't protect the quarterback. Danny O'Neal ended up getting 6 sacks in that game, or sacked 6 times. So this is just another of several examples where it feels like he ends up saying one thing and ultimately doing another, and it hasn't worked.
So we'll see what the team looks like off the bye at Michigan. You asked him on Monday, and I cut this and I played it earlier on the show, but you basically asked Luke Fickell, during the time away during the bye, did you consider, or did you maybe come up with some answers on how you can get this team to better show and to better show up and play on Saturdays? Can you reprise that question and what you took away from his answer?
I don't even know what I take away from his answers anymore,
It
Grant.
was long. I was going to play it as a bumper, and I'm like, this is like too, it just kept going and going and going.
I mean, it's tough because our job is to ask the questions, and at a certain point, it almost doesn't even matter what the answers are because it's not making a difference in the games. And he can talk about the consistency required and maintaining this level of consistency. And he's mentioned before competitive maturity, which is a phrase he's used a lot of times, referencing himself and how he handles losing and trying to be positive with this group. And um, I just go back to nothing's worked. And so you can say you're going to be consistent. And I asked him 2 questions. The other one I asked was, here's a simple question with a complex answer. How do you fix this?
Yeah,
Um,
that's the one.
there's just there's no answers on the field or nothing that translates. And so it almost doesn't matter what you say at this point. I realize I didn't answer your question, but it's just how I feel.
No, and it's the non-answer can be the answer, right? Have you noticed, like, have you been impressed throughout the week and seen things during the week? And I think you and Zach have talked about this too. Like, are you seeing things throughout the week and at practice and when talking to players, and then getting to Saturday, and are you surprised that, like, it's not transferring or it's not showing up in a way that you'd expect?
Well, that's been a talking point and something Luke was asked about on Monday. I'll say this. So we don't get to watch practice anymore. We haven't seen a practice since the second week in August. So I have no idea what they're doing.
Okay.
All we have to go on at this point are Luke Fickell talks to reporters at noon on Monday. Players talk to reporters around 4:15 on Tuesday. That's it. And they're going to put a positive spin on everything because they're probably bringing the people out who are going to do that. And they all say the right things, and they all talk about the importance of this bye week and how the team was able to stay together and they were talking to each other. And I don't know, man, maybe I'm just a cynic or I'm super skeptical. It's hard for me to take what they say and think, okay, I believe that this is going to translate. And it's not like I don't think they're not trying. They are. Everybody involved is trying incredibly hard. The coaches get paid a lot of money. Their jobs are on the line. The players get paid a lot of money. They didn't come here to lose. The problem is they're still losing on the field. So I go back to, I'm not sure how much it matters what they say, but at the very least, they're trying to come up with some changes. They just haven't been good enough when the games start.
No, and I don't think that's cynical at all. Like, Bill and I were talking earlier today. He's like, well, what do you need to see? You know, if they play Michigan close, or if they play, man, I've seen that. We've been doing this for 3 years. Like, I saw him play Oregon and Penn State close last year. And I've heard comments about, we're feeling like this is trending in the right direction. Then they changed offenses and the results just have kind of been the same throughout. So I think that's reasonable. It would be a little silly, or it would be a little nonsensical to start expecting something to change right out of nowhere in one of these matchups. Jesse Temple is here. Badger Connect, and listen to him on the camp with Zach. I've really enjoyed their podcast. Weirdly, over the last 2 weeks, because this is as bad as it's been, and maybe that's entertaining. Maybe I just get a kick out of it. So on the bye week, I thought I would ask you some bigger picture questions. Like, and the way I envision this, if you were to bump into an old friend or an acquaintance, like at a bar or at a store, and it's someone who follows sports, but they're not in it every week, they'd be like, "Hey, what's going on with this? Like, I watched a Badger game, and like, what's happening here?" So, like, bigger picture questions. The first one I have, because this comes up on a lot of our shows. It came up on Bill's show earlier today. Someone would say, Jesse, I keep hearing that Luke Fickell keeps bringing in all these great recruiting classes, and the recruiting's been great. So why isn't it translating? I'm sure that's something that you're asked. That's a bigger picture question. So let's address that over the bye. What's your take on that?
Freshmen don't always play right away, and unfortunately for everyone, it can take time. And yes, when Zach and I had one portion of our previous episode of the camp. It was on the positivity section. And I
Mhm.
said, his first two full recruiting classes. Now, 2023 doesn't really count because he came so late. They lost most of those guys to the portal, but they're banking on the talent that they signed in 2024 and 2025 to be the backbone of this group for the future. It's just that how many of them are going to play, and if they play, how ready are they right now? I mean, they had three redshirt freshmen starting the game a week ago, and as Luke has said, you never want freshmen to play on the offensive or defensive lines at this level. You have to hope that the lumps they're taking now will pay off a couple years from now, assuming everybody is still here. There's a lot to like in various parts. Okay. Linebacker, Mason Posa got a ton of run as a true freshman against Maryland. Cooper
Mhm.
Catalano keeps making plays. I love that young group. Eugene Hilton Jr. at wide receiver, I think he's got tremendous potential. Their running backs, Darian Dupree and Dylan Jones, are just second year players. We haven't seen much from them in terms of explosiveness. Maybe some of that is learning the college game. It certainly doesn't help that your offensive line isn't really opening holes. So there is individual talent, but how do you meld that? And I just think it's also harder than ever to keep these guys around. So there's a lot of factors at play, but ultimately Luke Fickell's job is to be able to continue to recruit, but develop these guys enough so they can be contributors in a time where it's harder than ever to keep them around. And when you're not winning, how willing are people going to be to stick around?
Yeah. Well, and a quick follow-up to that, like in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, are we gonna look back and think, yeah, the recruiting class ranking is not as indicative of success as it used to be? Is that just a product of the way that college football is kinda modernized and changed?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you were to look at all the college football playoff teams when it was a 14 playoff, they were top level recruiting classes. That stuff still matters. On the other hand, Wisconsin has kind of been an outlier because for so long they didn't always have the best recruiting classes. But
Mhm.
I do go back to what the strength of this program was, where it's harder than ever now the recruit and develop. So by year 3 and year 4, you were every bit as good as anybody else in the Big Ten at your position. Now you might not necessarily keep them. And Wisconsin's best recruiting classes under Paul Chryst didn't necessarily pan out, where the highly rated guys didn't play or the team didn't win. Having said all that, you need to continue to stack talent, and you need that talent to be able to materialize early because that's what's going to help separate you in this era.
So again, just a couple big picture questions as we're paused over the bye week. Like if someone just watched the first Badger game in a while, hey, I hear they're not doing good. Turns on the TV and it's like, what's going on here? They would maybe ask something like Jesse. They'd ask you like, I thought this whole program is built around the offensive line. My whole life it's been around the offensive line, and I turn on the TV and it looks like one of the weakest units on the field. So how would you explain where the O line is to someone who maybe isn't following the day to day or the week to week?
I tell them they were right, and hopefully they turned off the TV and did something else.
They're
There's
a
a few
smart judge of football. Okay.
There are so many different things at play. I don't even know where to begin with this, Grant. I know we don't have all day. First of all, their transfer portal targets didn't hit. You bring in a guy like Leighton Nelson, maybe he's just a rotational piece, supposedly. He was at Vanderbilt where AJ Blazek was. He hasn't been good enough to contribute. You bring in Davis Heinsohn. You need him to be your starting left tackle. He hasn't been good enough to be a starter. And really, we haven't seen much of him. Now, Luke Fickell said they tried him in practice at center. So maybe that's a solution at center. So you need your portal targets to hit. You've dealt with some serious injuries. You don't have Kevin Haywood, who tears his ACL in spring ball. He was going to be a starter as a redshirt freshman. You've had Jake Renfro hurt. You've had Kerry Kadonko hurt. You've had to flip 4 different positions where the only guy playing the same spot as he did in week 1 is Joe Brunner at left guard. That's not easy. I think AJ Blazek, as Zach and I talked about, probably deserves at least some criticism because if your first move is going to be to flip Riley Mullman from the right side to the left side after one bad game of Davis Heinsohn, did you put these guys in a position to succeed before that where they could do that? And
Yeah.
also just the ability to keep offensive linemen in the state. They haven't been able to get the 4-star level talent here for several years, and that predates Luke Fickell. But that was one of the strengths of Wisconsin is you're getting the best offensive linemen in the state. And you also lost some guys to the transfer portal who weren't happy with their roles. So when you put that all together, you have what Wisconsin has right now.
And lastly, a big picture question that's kind of got swept under the rug because I think there are bigger fish to fry, but this is the third straight big picture. This is the third straight transfer quarterback in a row. I think fans have a right to wonder, like, at what point is there a plan to get off of that carousel? If that means Hunter Simmons or Carter Smith, like, what would you explain to someone about 3 straight transfer portal quarterbacks? Like, what's the off ramp? There has to be an off ramp to that eventually, right?
It's a great plan not to have a transfer portal quarterback if you have someone else who can be a Big Ten level starter. Unfortunately, Wisconsin hasn't had that. The first offseason, they lost Graham Mertz. Chase Wolf didn't end up coming back because you had multiple transfers coming in. Tanner Mordecai, I mean, nothing wrong with that ad. Just the offense didn't perform. He missed a month of the season with a broken hand. In year two, you didn't think Braden Locke was the answer, so you went to Tyler Van Dyke. And in year three, you ended up losing your entire quarterback room because you had an offensive coordinator transition. I can't fault what Wisconsin was doing here. And so, problem is they've all gotten injured. And so, this team isn't in the business of making excuses, but it doesn't help Luke Fickell's tenure that every starting quarterback has gotten injured and you've had to rely on a backup. The long term answer, well, if you go to the transfer portal and get someone young like Danny O'Neal who's got multiple years of eligibility, maybe he can be the answer. Hunter Simmons, that's a transfer portal quarterback. Carter Smith is your freshman, could be the quarterback of the future, but at least as of now, is the fourth guy, is behind these three other guys. So you're going to have to do an awful lot to leapfrog someone like a Danny O'Neal if you want to put yourself in position to start. Yeah, this is not what they want to be every year, but this is kind of the spot that they're in given where they're at quarterback each offseason.
And Jesse, before I let you go, you ran Bascom Hill. Can you tell us about that for 30 seconds?
Yeah, I attempted to run the hill with the basketball team for preseason conditioning. They do this every year. They've done it since Bo Ryan was here. I did it 11 years ago when Bo was at Elver Park. It was a disaster. I puked all over myself at the bottom of the hill and embarrassed myself. So the goal here was redemption 11 years later. My goal was to run more than 4 and to not puke. I accomplished one of them, but you can check out the video at Badger Connect.
And we won't tell you which one you accomplished. You'll have to tune in and watch to see which one of those two things that you pulled off. Well, Jesse, I appreciate the time. Back to the grind and enjoy the game at the Big House on Saturday.
Thanks, Grant. Talk soon.